I'm Brad Wolf, and welcome to DireDen, and this is part of our Game Master series called Mastering the Game, where I talk to Deck Save Dan about role-playing. And Game Masters, you're going to want to send this to your players to make your job easier. So the next thing on our list, the next tip, is to feed the hot hand. And that's a basketball reference. I don't know if you guys get a lot of basketball in the UK.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not a sports guy. I hold my hands up. I like ice hockey, and that's about it. But no, basketball is definitely not a thing over here. There's probably loads of UK basketball fans going, "What? What are you talking about?" I'm sorry. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
so feed the hot hand is the idea. Whoever is on the hot streak, whoever's shooting well that night, you want to keep giving them the ball, right? So the feed the hot hand is the idea of who's ever like really into it, whoever's got the momentum. You want to keep giving the scene back to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of any ways that applies to your game or any examples of that?
Oh, this is a fine line, and it like I look as a DM or GM, you want to do that. Like someone who is like hot on the RP that night, like just on it, or whatever it may be, explanation combat, just rolling well, just on it. You do, of course, you do. But I think there is that fine line. If you keep giving them something, you've got to really be conscious of your other players because no matter if you're in a smaller group, sort of 3 4 people, or a bigger group, if you're all right with a bigger group, sort of 5 6, maybe even 7, which is madness. I play in a 7 person campaign. It can be madness sometimes, but
Oh, yeah.
you've got to be really conscious of sort of other people at the table, I think, and just making sure you are still sharing it. Yeah, you want to give that person that feed the hot hand. You want to give them that ball to run with and score with, kind of thing. But you have got to be conscious. There's other team members there that kind of want to play. So, but at
Right.
the same time, if they, from a player point of view, if you understand what the GM's doing there, then you can pass that ball to other people as well. If you
Right.
if you're if you're hot on it and you understand as a player, right? Yeah, I'm rolling with this. I want to get other people involved. How would you? I'm going to say this. What would you say? That sort of thing. Cool, but
Yeah.
it's just that fine line for me.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like, because it's one thing as a game master to look at these rules and think about how we as game masters can implement them,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, it's really beneficial to that everybody at the table understands these tips, because you're exactly right. Like, you want to feed the hot hand as the game master, but you also want, like what you just said, you want that player who's on the hot streak to know, and that
Hmm.
leads us right to our next step,
Yep.
that share the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, leads on perfectly to sort of share the spotlight, and that's something that I am hugely conscious. Even more than probably anything else at my table is the sharing the spotlight. Um, is just to make sure that everyone is enjoying the game and
mhm,
has a chance to shine in their certain way, whatever it may be. And I know that can't happen in every single game if you're in a long campaign or something like that. It's not always completely viable, but it's something as a game master that I'm always conscious of. So I will always, even if we've got that player who is, kicking ass and all the rest of it, I will, if they're not that familiar with playing or something like that, I will always move it on and be like, so how would Donald react to this? This has just been said. What would he do? That sort of thing, and just ensuring that everyone gets their piece. Again, with that, it's how they play. I think as a GM, once you've understood how sort of players play, again, lots of videos out there on that. You might have a player who's more of a spectator,
mhm,
who
right.
is more just there to sort of watch and enjoy the role play that other people do, or just there for a bit of combat, and they're
Right.
just there for sort of beer and pretzels, and I think my player would do this. When do we get to kill some orcs? That sort of thing. So just understanding, and in terms of that sort of sharing that spotlight.
Yeah, well, and I think, like, some examples of ways to share that spotlight. One of the things that I like to do when I'm role playing an NPC is, I try to be a little bit divisive, right? So you got the player who's the hot hand, and they're kind of driving the scene, and they're persuading this NPC, and then I'll turn and like, well, what does your elf friend think about that?
Yep.
And so have the NPC try to like see if there's any conflict in the group, right? So this NPCs, that's as a way to kind of, you know back out of this persuasion, right? And
Yeah.
that creates some resistance to the scene, some tension, right? But you're using the other players trying to bait them,
Yeah.
and then the other players get to decide if they're going to support their friend,
Absolutely. Or
or if are they going to fall for it? Are they going to end up in the argument, and the NPC is going to be able to like sneak away while they're arguing, right?
literally did it in my last game. It's funny you bring up that example. Have a pirate captain basically with
Yeah.
the rest of the pirates. Yeah, very charismatic. That's his whole thing. He's been riding the game all night. He's had that spotlight. He's very good at improvising and role playing, um, and it is literally experience. I'm like, okay, I've got to move this around. Walked into a shop, dwarven shopkeeper. Wasn't going to be like this, but I thought he's not going to like him. He's just not going to like humans, and that is it. No other humans in the group, just him. So instant dislike. No, I'm not having any of it. That's it. So and then it built that dynamic. He tried to charm and all the rest of it. You can try. Go. Let's roll. Pretty sure it's going to fail. But and that was it. It's like, so we had another dwarf in the group. Cool. So what would Coco say to this? How would Coco react to this? And then there was a whole thing. So yeah, absolutely. Just throwing that spanner in the works that
Yeah.
we as GMs like to do every so often.
Yep, I did a similar thing years ago. I had a player who was uh he played a Goliath fighter, right? Very straightforward, straight laced character. But he had become kind of the hero of the group because he always rolled well in combat. He was very much like Grog from Critical Role,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So but he always kind of shied away from the social encounters. One, because the player himself was shy,
Yeah,
and two, because his character had a low charisma. So it was an easy excuse for that player to like drop out of social encounters. But at one point, the group walks into a scene, and I have the female shopkeep like turn to him and like with kind of lusty eyes, like, "Ooh, I like this big strong man," right? And
yeah. Yes.
and so from that point forward, he had advantage on
Yeah,
all of his charisma checks in that scene because she found him attractive because he was
yeah.
big and strong, right? So that was a way to like, you know, I guess I could have even just let him have his strength bonus to his persuasion checks or whatever,
Yeah, whatever it
however
may
you
be.
want to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
mechanically,
yeah.
right? But you can find ways for NPCs to have, a bent towards one character over another simply
Absolutely.
because of, their background or their species or their class, right? Like
Hmm.
a cleric might have advantages in a social encounter if they're in a temple, right?
Yeah.
So you can find ways to draw other players into a scene that they otherwise might shy away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, another example, literally in the last game as well, is I've given one of them a badge, which is I'm big into props, so I actually bought a badge and gave it to them.
Nice.
It's a pin of the king's crest, and it's anyone who's loyal to the king, you now have advantage on charisma checks because they can see that you're loyal to the king as well. Done. It's those little bits that create that. Just that it's the world building, isn't it? It's that.
Right. Yeah.
It all plays into it. So.
Right. You can use the world building that you've already established, or
Mm,
use the role play to show, not tell, right? The
absolutely.
lore of the game, or
Mhm,
the mood of a town or whatever. There's
mhm,
a lot of different ways to share the spotlight and invite others in, right?
mhm.
Which was actually the third tip on our list, was the invite others in, but I think we just covered that fairly well.
Kind of covered that, yeah, yeah. I think it kind of goes. That does kind of go hand in hand. Is that sharing the spotlight? You find ways to, to invite others in, to get them involved, whether that be the NPC who takes a shine to one and not the other, or maybe there's an object or a location that gives you charisma in, or whatever it may be. Like you say, it doesn't matter about the mechanic as such. It encourages the other players who had that strength or that advantage to really come forward and start playing.
Right, and we use examples of like the dungeon master giving advantage because of a player's background or
Hmm.
species, right? Or
Yeah.
giving them a bonus from a different stat that they wouldn't normally use for
Hmm.
a persuasion check or deception check.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for players, so DM, share this video with your players too, because this is going to help you. For
Absolutely.
players, for players, you can think of, you know, just all you really have to know about the other characters is, background and species and class. If you know those three things, you can use those to invite other players in, right? You know,
Absolutely.
all those examples we just gave. Well, you're the cleric. Shouldn't you know about this? Or you're the elf. You should know something about this, right?
Yeah.
As a way to invite them in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, that's a perfect bit of advice, because it does, again, create that cohesion within the group and
Right.
gets them thinking about, okay, how does this world work? Especially for, for beginner players. It's like, look, it's not all about the rolling of the dice and the mechanics and the crunch of it and stuff. That's an absolute big part of the game. And if you're into that, cool, rock on. But when it comes to that sort of, like, the role playing and the improvising and that sort of thing, they're the stuff that they're the bits you need to know, really, because then the
Right.
other bits sort of tack onto that.
Right. Yeah. Give me a good group of role players who are going to be engaged and describe what they do, and I'll manage the game system. Like,
100%.
like
Oh yeah.
I don't need to, like, the players who are really good at knowing, all right, I'm going to do this with my bonus action and this with my
Mhm.
action, and I want to set this up for my reaction. Like, that's great. Right? The players who understand the game are fantastic, but I
Yeah.
don't need everybody at the table to understand the game.
No.
As long as you're creative with your description of what you want to do, I'll be like, okay, you want to run across the room, jump up and swing from the chandelier and land on the bad guy and stab him in the back, right? Okay. Then I can figure out which part of that is the bonus action to dash
Yep.
and which part of that is the move action to jump on the chandelier. And then, okay, there's the attack roll, right? So I
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, but that's, that's part of us, isn't it? I know we don't know everything and we can't know everything, but we will know enough to be like, cool, okay, yeah, let's do that step by step. Because if
right.
someone's going to bring that to the table, oh god, I love that.
So this has been an excerpt from a longer video with Deck Save Dan. If you want to see the whole thing where we talk about improvisation and getting players invested in the game through their roleplay, click the link on your left. Otherwise, click the link on the right to find more videos that YouTube thinks are best for you.